go. Yeah, no, sorry, I didn't realize this was live last time. So that'll be way easier than what we were gonna have to do. All right, thank you.
That's basically. So
Yeah.
we'll show you again in the next thing. This is on charge when
That's what I
when we
assumed.
put this in charge. So you take it off charge, put it in here, plug it in, and then
Go back and pair it.
yeah, there's a red button on that. But the presentation's not up there, is it?
No, it's not. I can switch that over though. I know how to.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if we're.
So now to get the presentation out to YouTube.
Yep.
Last time we did the one to the helo didn't work. So I forget what was this table A.
You can stop these up here. No.
Yeah.
For some reason, it cleared my sources up here. So.
The sound is separate. That's why I did this. You see, sometimes I get
I've noticed that those two, if one person's working on this one,
not even change it, it's just a stream 2 helo. So whenever I press this one, it changes this one. So I don't know what's in helo. Because this is just fixed.
okay.
So it's like DMP, whatever's on DMP1 goes to the camera. Which generally means I have to say, okay, let's take the rear camera back to main. And now it says rear camera to halo.
Okay.
So whatever's on DMP1 goes to the halo.
Okay, yeah, it's.
So what have you got now? It said it to send it to all. You tried to send it to all.
It may be. One of the problems we run into is this one and these two. It's back. What is it showing?
Have you got the screens now on YouTube?
No, she's still seeing the room, but you can see the screens on the TV, so we think we're good enough for right
Well,
now.
that's because I set it to rear camera. So now what you can do is you go here and you take DMP1 to table A. Go back to main. Table A laptop, and you should see the presentation.
What do you see on the menu? This restaurant and this restaurant, I've noticed I've set things up in here and Rachel will start the video here. When she hits something on here, it resets everything.
It says table A. That's right. I mean, I don't know what else to tell you.
That's fine. We're about to get started, so this will be good enough. It takes about 30 seconds to go that delay.
You have the presentation now, Taylor? You have the presentation. Pick it up and press the button.
Okay.
So, Mike can win the crowd mic.
And then you want to put one right here, so well, I'll just use one of these so I have.
Okay.
Testing, testing. Ooh.
I think so, yeah. Testing. Yeah, it's on. I think they're going to get you to run the mic around when they do questions. You go on, okay? We got plenty.
over a little?
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll scoot this table over.
Okay. All right. You ready? Okay. Hello? Oh, whoa. Y'all shut up. Okay, good job. Microphone works. Hello, I'm Jennifer Brown with Sane Associates. I'm the project manager for the Opelika Bicycle and Pedestrian Plan. Also here with me today is David Coggin. He's the lead analyst for the project. Becky White, who you saw when you came in, is principal and owner at Sane. And then from the city, we've got Lee McInnes in the orange right there, the assistant city engineer, Matt Mosley, planning director, and Kevin Rice, ADA coordinator. So thank you all for being here. On behalf of the city, we'd like to thank you for attending, whether that be here in person or on the YouTube live stream. The purpose of today's meeting is to provide an overview of the draft plan and really to get your input on the plan and for prioritization of any future projects. So really thank you for being here today. Before we jump in to the presentation, if you are in person here today, you should have grabbed an information packet when you came in, when you signed in. After this presentation or during this presentation, you can access the presentation slides as well as that same information packet. And then there's also at the end of the information packet, the last sheet is a comment form. There's also a link to a survey on this same location. It's the same questions, so you can fill that out electronically if you prefer. So you can access that through this link here, or you can search on the website. You can look under the living and visiting section of the city website, and also under the Opelika Bicycle Advisory section of the website. So lots of different ways to get to this information. So earlier this year, ALDOT awarded the city with funds to be used for the preparation of a citywide bicycle and pedestrian plan document. The city chose to include a long-range master plan and a short-range implementation plan. The study area includes primarily local roads, but you will see some state and county roads included, and that's just to provide continuity of recommended accommodations. So like I said, today we're focused on the master plan, but we did want to give you an overview of how we got to where we are with the master plan. This chart shows the general plan process. We began by gathering a lot of information, reviewing existing planning documents, existing conditions, establishing a vision, and then goals and objectives associated with that vision. So we used GIS, which is Geographic Information System Mapping, which included existing facilities, population densities, bicycle and pedestrian generators, connections to planned facilities, traffic volumes. We used all that information in our base mapping. This map, which is also included in your information packet, shows the existing bicycle and pedestrian facilities in the city. So those are all the dashed lines. The dash blue is associated with bike facilities, and the dash red is associated with pedestrian facilities like sidewalks. And then you'll also see some areas identified, the bicycle and pedestrian trip generators, things like schools, shopping, recreational areas. We've identified those on the map. So this map is really just it's the same information as the previous map, but it's just more of a zoomed in area of primarily downtown Opelika. Currently, the city maintains approximately 216 centerline miles of roadway. A little over 15% of those include sidewalk, and less than 4% include bicycle facilities. This map shows the population density, how the population is distributed in Opelika. So those red, orange areas, that's where the higher concentrations of folks are living, and then the blue and purple areas is less dense population. population density is an important tool for us because typically areas with denser populations, those areas are more likely to use or have higher demand for potential facilities. So while developing the base mapping, we also performed a review of existing conditions, which consisted of looking at those existing planning documents, looking at traffic volume data, performing a high-level review of the existing roadway network, so a physical review of local roadways, and looking at their suitability for accommodations. This map is the construction feasibility map. So in our field review, which included a windshield review of local roadways, looked to determine feasibility for installing new bicycle or pedestrian accommodations. Some of the items we looked at in the field were the roadway widths, travel lane widths, potential grading, drainage issues, potential property impacts. From this review, we were able to take those local roads and categorize them into easy, medium, or hard construction feasibility criteria. So you see a lot of green on this map, and that's primarily due to Opelika's relatively flat terrain. So there's not as many grading challenges associated with the construction. So after we got all of this information, we used that to finalize the city's vision for bicycle and pedestrian transportation. So the city really has a desire to create a connected community that provides access for all roadway users, a community that facilitates connection between people and the places they want to be. When developing their Americans with Disabilities Act, their ADA transition plan, the city set out to become the safest, most business and family-friendly city in America by 2023. So ultimately, the city planned to connect all neighborhoods to destinations within the city, including the city center, schools, recreational facilities, places of worship, shopping, dining, and to do that, move forward with this plan. And as shown on the previous slide, we talked about a little over 15% of the city maintained roadways have sidewalk, and less than 4% have bicycle facilities. So it's the city's desire to double these percentages by 2030, which requires construction of 33 additional sidewalk miles and 7.5 miles of bike facilities. So now that we have that big picture, how do we get there? So we've taken this vision of connecting people and places and developed goals to achieve that vision. Existing planning documents and ongoing efforts like the city's comprehensive plan, Creekline Trails of Opelika plan, Carver-Jeter plan, those all provide a baseline for this plan's goals. The goals for the plan revolve around finding out what links are missing, how to address those missing links, and which areas should be addressed first. So using all that background information and those identified goals, we developed a draft master plan, which we're going to present to you today. This plan identifies roadways that are most appropriate for providing bicycle and or pedestrian connections and what those types of accommodations should look like or may look like. So this is the master plan, the draft master plan. It's a long-range plan that provides really a visual of recommended bike and pedestrian accommodations. This map is included in your information packet. So you'll have an overall map, and then there'll be an inset map that just kind of zooms into the closer into the downtown area. This plan includes connections to existing plans, identifies key routes that connect to destinations within the city, and also to other regional plans. The map shown here includes existing facilities, which we mentioned earlier, those dashed lines, and also recommendations for new facilities. So just kind of a quick, when you're just glancing at this, those blue lines are really associated with bike lanes, red lines associated with sidewalk, and there's a couple other colors with different types of accommodation recommendations. So the next few slides I'm going to show you provide illustrations of how potential accommodations may look once they're installed. This is just a way to give you an idea, a feel for those recommendations. Accommodation types, of course, can vary based on whatever the adjoining land use is, and the exact dimensions shown on these illustrations are really just suggested guidance are not necessarily required, and can vary given different or particular situations. So this slide shows a paved shoulder and bike lane options. This next slide shows the separated bike lane. We have more of a physical buffer between traffic, and then also a bike boulevard. A bike boulevard allows motor vehicle traffic, but it has more of a focus on bicycle traffic. Your motor vehicle traffic is less traffic volumes, it's a lower speed, and lane widths are typically more narrow, so it's not as necessarily as appealing to motor vehicle traffic as it would be bikes. So this next slide is the sidewalk and a shared use path. So the bottom one is the shared use path, and that's where cyclists and pedestrians are sharing a path together. There's bidirectional traffic, and for bicycle and pedestrians, and there's typically a wider buffer between that shared use path and the roadway. So our next immediate step after the master plan is finalized is applying the prioritization procedure. And although the city would love to be able to go out and implement every recommendation in the long range plan, it's just not financially feasible. So having a prioritized list of projects will really provide the city a guide of how they can implement these projects as they move forward. The prioritization procedure, which you can see those criteria listed there. There's 10 criteria. A points value will be assigned to each criteria, and so that allows us to use a weighted point system to prioritize projects, so it's more of a quantitative approach to that project implementation. Each potential project will be evaluated based on these criteria, and then that will present a list of prioritized projects. After we've got that prioritization, then we can start looking at phasing and how we can phase those projects out. The majority of the criteria listed here are objective. Our objective, like the generator proximity, which looks at how closely an accommodation is located to an actual generator. But what's really important and why you're here tonight is to provide your input. So your input is included in this prioritization. It's very important to us, and it's very important to this entire process. Without you being engaged, we can't effectively complete that prioritization. And so this is when you have an opportunity to really provide your input that can affect the outcome of the plan. So if you're attending, like I've already mentioned, you've got a comment form in your information packet, or you can access online on the city's website, and we've got that survey link. So we're really asking y'all to take this opportunity to share your input here and what you'd like to see. We do have a comment period for 14 days following the meeting, so don't feel like you've got to get everything filled out tonight and turn back in. You're more than welcome to do that, but if you want to take these maps with you, think about what's really important to you, and then you can fill that in. Turn that out, fill that out, turn it in. So following the prioritization and phasing, there is an opportunity to identify some more short-term projects, short-term implementation projects. So we'll have a more focused recommendations for a select number of roadways, and they're fall in that short-term category because they're more relatively low cost and how you can get those improvements implemented. So there'll be a more detailed constructability field review associated with those, and then looking at some concept mapping. The report will document the process, provide guidance for implementation, not just for existing facilities, but any future roadways that the city sees or future developments that they can incorporate as things get built. So this concludes our presentation, and like I've said several times, we want to get your input on this draft master plan. Comment forms are provided for those here. If you're watching virtually, you can access those online. After this meeting, if you've got friends, you've got other people you want to talk with us about, definitely direct them to the website. It's under the living and visiting section. It's under the bicycle action committee action, I'm sorry. Bicycle advisory section. You can also just search the website to find it, and then the link there at the bottom of the page too. So these questions shown on the screen are the same questions that you'll see in the comment form and the survey. Is this plan consistent with the stated goals that you've seen in the presentation tonight? Does the plan connect destinations that are important to you? And then looking at the map, looking at those recommendations, what streets do you think should be the city's top priorities? So like I've mentioned, you'll have a 14-day comment period to kind of mull this over and identify what your top 3 priorities are. So thank you guys so much for attending. For questions, if we have any questions, I would like to go to the room first. So Matt has got a microphone, so he can come to you for you to ask those questions. And then once we wrap up here in the room, we can go to questions submitted through the YouTube channel. So are there any questions or comments?
Thanks. Nice. I'm Suzanne Montgomery. I live on South 7th and Avenue E, and I know that the bike plan will impact us to some degree, which is fine. I'm all for the bike and pedestrian plan. What I'm wondering is, and I haven't seen anything in the plan, how does one, how are you going to handle bathrooms, or if you are going to have any particular facilities for people, particularly if they're handicapped and they find themselves in need of a restroom? How do you handle litter? Anything when children are involved, if they're, or the, you need to access it through emergency management, you know, some of the emergency teams. I mean, how is this, I see the pathways, but I don't see any facilities or anything that, where you would be able to handle emergencies or things that would be adverse to the city, like, you know, an accident, for instance. Can we, is there some way to deal with a litter? You know, all those things are kind of a concern, especially when we live where we do.
As far as emergency medical access, the facilities that we've primarily identified here are all alongside the roadway. They're already on the roadway network. As far as any trails or paths, we don't have, this particular plan is focused on those local roadways, so it doesn't include anything that would be, you know, really far off the roadway that couldn't be accessed. As far as litter, or that's really an enforcement issue, I'm not sure how we would, how that could be addressed in a plan like this. Matt,
Yeah,
did you?
I believe that most of the issues you're talking about, emergency, being able to get to people on those, I mean, most of these, as Jennifer said, they'll be along existing roadways, so they should be able to be accessed through our natural street network. This plan is not just a recreational plan where we're expecting people to use this to go on kind of trips or using it joyriding. I mean, we hope people do that, but this will also be part of our transportation network, and so people will continue to use these facilities like they would a street, and so we'll have to clean them like we would streets, or be able to kind of make them function the same way we would any other part of our transportation network. And hopefully they'll connect to places that have restrooms that are available to the public when people need them, like churches, schools, whatever people are using them to get from and to, they'll be able to kind of use as part of their daily life.
I think we have a question in the back.
Thank you. Is there a way for us to know the exact type of bike facility you're recommending with these blue lines? So you have different, you know, a separated bike lane or the different options you suggested. Is there a way for us to identify the type?
So I think that's kind of the exact type for some of the facilities won't necessarily be nailed down in the plan. It's more of a, the city kind of has options of what they can implement there when they get to that stage. We have identified some shared use path areas or paved shoulders or just really assigned bike route also in that plan. It's kind of hard to see. It might be hard to see on the printout there. But some of the specific bike lane, there are some options there that the city can look at once they get into implementation.
Can you speak to particularly Waverly Parkway being a bike lane versus a shared use path?
I might have to get some help from David on that.
So, can y'all hear me? Waverly Parkway. Which, between what roads are you looking at? Correct, yeah. Yeah, gotcha. Gotcha. So this is one of the roads that was, I believe, specified in a long-range transportation plan. And so, we kind of took a lot of the planned and programmed roadways and went with those suggestions. As far as specifically for Waverly Parkway, it's built, it's kind of concrete paved as opposed to asphalt paved. And so we think bike lanes might be a little bit easier of an addition in terms of, how the shoulders work out and everything. But again, we can definitely take a second look at that and make sure that that's, what we think is the best route to go for that roadway.
I do think that is part of what we're asking for tonight is those particular suggestions for different streets, and that's one that internally we've had a lot of different ideas for, and I think we'll continue to look at that. As to types, I know one thing we've asked Sane to look at is to give us some recommendations on when we should use certain types of features over other types of features, and so that's one thing that we'll work with them on as we go through. But we definitely want those types of suggestions about different facilities at different locations.
Hi, Dave Moynihan. I live on Hamilton Road, and pretty much on a daily basis, there bicycles go by our house. Pretty close to Tigertown. Mm-hmm. Basically, Ogletree turns into Hamilton. There's all the way through Auburn, there's a bike lane. And typical cycling traffic goes past my house, goes around the circle, around the backside of Tigertown, and connects to Cunningham to get to First Avenue. It's a high traffic area already. Even with COVID, there was, Saturday morning there was 9 people that went by in a cluster, and I was part of that. And we feel terrible blocking traffic, and we don't want to. We're riding single file as best we can, but yet there's still, Tigertown traffic that wants to get back and forth. So it would be terrific if you can add that section. I saw it was in there as a proposed width, or you were going to make it wider perhaps. And also I understand that it's expensive because the road is only so wide. But that would be a high priority for people that cycle in the town. The other is an observation. You had talked about two-way bike lanes, and we have one in town, but there's no barrier. And last fall, we had the Johnny Ray Century, and there was, help me out, 150 people? 300 people on that two-lane bike lane. And guess what? It was parked right in the middle of it, in front of Dollar General, an 18-wheeler tractor trailer. So here we are on the wrong side of the traffic, facing cars coming at us. It's just an observation. We either need to fix that or put a barrier in there or something that keeps cars out of that lane. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. My name is Michael Carter, and I love the plan that you have here, but I have a question in terms of our residents and our businesses, particularly on 10th and on 2nd Avenue. How is this going to impact them, especially if widening of the roads may have to occur?
Impact them as far as from a right-of-way standpoint, or?
Yes, you got sidewalks, construction? How would that impact those businesses and residents?
Well, I think you'd have to take obviously we don't want to impact them in a way that would hinder their business or, their homes. So when you get to a closer look at, actually designing that and how it gets implemented, there are different ways maybe, I'm not totally familiar with how specifically wide those lanes are, but you can look at reducing the lane widths. You can look to see what you can actually fit within that right of way and still be able to accommodate access to businesses and homes and respecting their property, at the same time being able to provide transportation opportunities for all roadway users.
And safety, I'm assuming, as well.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you may have partially answered this question already. Are we going to be using just existing right-of-way, or is additional right-of-way going to be required for some of these facilities?
There may be areas where additional right-of-way would be needed to implement the recommendations.
Any idea on how much this is going to cost?
We will have some cost estimate, a high-level cost estimate included in the plan. That will be part of the prioritization procedure, but I don't have that information ready at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, so was it within the scope of this project to look at power line right away to have connectivity to different places of interest?
Exactly, where power lines are existing or have been abandoned?
Existing is.
Well, we really focused at the roadways, looking at it from a transportation perspective. So off roadways were not a big focus of this plan. If there are known areas where we can provide connection, then the power company's okay with that, we can look at maybe adding those connections onto the plan or having those as connection points on the roadways.
Are power line right-of-ways accessible to using in a bike network in our state, or especially in Opelika where we have a municipally owned power company?
I would think as long as there's an agreement between the city and the power company to have that use, then it would be an okay thing to have.
Thank you.
Hey, two things. Well, the first, I noticed there's just a contradictory thing for Rocky Brook, for the existing facilities, it shows that there's an existing sidewalk all the way up Rocky Brook.
Okay.
And then on the master plan, it shows that there's a proposed sidewalk all the way up Rocky Brook.
With an existing bike lane.
With an existing bike lane. There is a bike lane, but there's not an existing sidewalk the whole way. There's a partial way, maybe, about a half a mile where there is an existing sidewalk. But the second would be, I guess, enforcement for bike lanes. Specifically, what comes to mind is Rocky Brook. There are many residences there who they park in the bike lane, they put their trash cans in the bike lane. Mm-hmm. Is there a way where we can start really enforcing this? I'm not saying go start putting tickets on everyone's cars, but maybe add some signage, no parking in bike lanes, remove debris from bike lanes, things like that, just so that they don't have to swerve out into the roadway.
So we can definitely include some suggested enforcement items in the plan. But how the city, I guess, implements that enforcement, not sure how we could, we include that in the plan, but it's really got to be implemented by the city. But I do know we've got some pictures of that situation. So what is the city's stance on signage for no parking in those areas? Is that something we can follow back up with y'all on, or is that something that y'all?
Yeah, so we do have some regulations regarding what can be in bike lanes and whatnot. We probably need to relook at those policies and guidelines, and that's one of the goals we hope to come out of this process. And
Hey, that sounds like me.
so, and I think that's one of the things that will be noted as part of their review of this plan and part of the public input, hopefully from what we hear back from residents. And so we can take that and then move towards looking to the more policy goals and more enforcement requirements on some of those facilities. Signage, just as well too.
So there are many areas in the town, particularly in very low-income areas, where the side of the road is literally just a pathway that you can see any time of year because people have worn it down from walking. Are you relying on us to let you know where that is? Because, I mean, in general, unfortunately, super low income isn't going to fill this out, and they need sidewalks.
Right.
So are you guys relying on us to do that? Or have you guys gone and found out where these areas are?
We've tried our best to locate where the areas where there's already evidence
Okay.
of pedestrian traffic. And there's also a transportation equity piece to our prioritization procedure that looks at, looking at those low income areas too, where they, folks who live in low income areas tend to need transportation options that are not motor vehicles, ways that they can walk or bike, because they may not have access to, a car. So that's definitely something that we are including in the plan, considering in the plan. I think I saw somebody else raise their hand.
Hey, I'm Mike Akins, and I am living on 10th Street near 7th Avenue, and I think this is fantastic to hear about these plans, and I really support this. Observing people coming up and down 10th, there are lots of pedestrian traffic and lots of bicycle traffic up and down 10th. Having lived there for a while now, my main concern is that that street appears to attract considerable, very heavy truck traffic.
Okay.
To the consternation of all the people who are walking up and down there. And so I'm wondering, does this plan or would this plan consider suggestions or proposals about rerouting some of the especially very heavy truck traffic? I'm talking about semis, and possibly reducing speed through that area, which I think that area was originally intended to be a, sort of a picturesque residential area. And it's become a major highway. So I'd like to see the speed reduced to a normal residential speed and have have speed control devices down through 10th. Sometimes there's appears to be no enforcement of the speed limit all the way down 10th heading toward the bridge. I think that would improve the quality in that area.
Okay. Yeah, we can look at if we have that truck traffic percentage available, and maybe review with the city if there are known or signed truck routes, and look at maybe.
Yeah, and if there's a way for me to
potential
write this up and
relocating.
present it informatively to the city,
Okay.
I'd like to know about it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, please put that in your comments, and we do have some truck routes that are designated, and that always largely comes back to enforcement and making sure that they're on the correct routes when they are supposed to be.
Thank you. Several things have been mentioned about Waverly Parkway that I would like to emphasize. And as you mentioned, Waverly Parkway is one of these old highways that's made out of very hard concrete, and it has a curb on it most of the time, which
if you're riding a bicycle and you're trying to get away from traffic, it's very dangerous. But today I noticed as I was going down the road, the power company has just cleared their right-of-ways, and that is a road that a lot of it, I'm not sure how much of it, but it does have a lot of the power line right-of-way right next to the road. And it just occurred to me that that would be an ideal way to put a bike lane and sidewalk together, or shared something there. And it doesn't have to be right next to the road, because you could be a little away from the road even and still get to where you want to go. But it looked like something could be done there right now almost. And there is a lot more pedestrian traffic and bicycle traffic along there, because there are some low-income housings nearby. Thank you.
Thank you. Does this plan include funding for repairs to sidewalks in some of those areas where existing sidewalks are there, they need repairing?
So this plan will look at funding opportunities for new facilities, but I think for existing sidewalk maintenance, that's covered in the ADA transition plan. So Kevin is here tonight if you have more specific questions about that. But that's, yeah, the ADA transition plan is geared more towards the maintenance of existing sidewalk.
I'm Sue Ellen Talixon, and my husband and I, my family and I walk up 10th every single day, and yes, there's a ton of traffic, but there's tons of pedestrian and bike traffic in our neighborhood, and going down Renfro over to the school and to Floral Park, boatloads, lots of, well, not quite as much right now, school, children walking and things. And so my question is, with the prioritization, I think you mentioned that the cost of constructability was a factor. So if Renfro is a medium, I mean, it would be a more difficult place to build. Does that automatically mean that that would not be a first priority for?
No, I don't know. I mean, it will obviously play a role in a area that is in the medium or more difficult construction, is obviously going to cost more. But if that's in an area that's located, it's really close to a generator or multiple trip generators, and it's scored high in prioritization input from the public, and it can definitely move it up the list. So yes, please don't think that there's a road that looks difficult from a constructability that it's just not going to get built, because that's yeah, we've had a recent plan that we worked on where one of the roadways is probably the most difficult roadway in the city it's actually under design now. It's one of the first ones under design. So yes, don't think that that's a deal breaker. It can still move on up the list.
Okay, thank you.
Prioritization.
I would also add that we will look at these facilities too, not just always in order, but as we do major road work on some streets, we'll probably have some facilities move forward or backwards. The other thing is larger projects, we can always look towards state and federal funding to do kind of some of the bigger ones, like a Waverly Parkway, or some that will join larger sections of town together.
That's right.
Hey, I'm noting Veterans Parkway is segmented where it does have an existing bike lane, but then the connection to a sidewalk later is not included. I assume that's because it crosses 280, and that's a difficult crossing to maneuver. Have y'all discussed, have you tossed ideas around that we could chime in on of how you could include that connection point?
Yes, if you have suggestions on connections or what you would like to see there, you can include that.
Have y'all kind of considered some options
As
of how
far-
you could utilize that?
Crossing 280?
Just making veterans a full connection, not breaking it up. Does that make sense? How it's not included in the master plan, that section.
Yes, I believe she's talking about the section of veterans that goes south of the 280 Birmingham Highway section. It's probably one that we need to take a look at, especially with some more development that's occurring there. So we'll note that as part of the plan. But those connections across major state routes are always some of the most difficult to make, and so we'll have to work with our state partners to look at those. Is there anyone else here in the room that has any questions before we see if there are any questions online? Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
No questions, just comments, and most people are filling out the survey online, so.
Okay, good deal.
And all positive comments, everybody's excited.
No, good. Thank y'all. Thank y'all so much for attending. Please fill out those forms. If there is a connection that we've overlooked, like the Renfro connection, if it was, when we were looking at the mapping, when we're here, we're looking at, the way that maybe we may travel it, just based on, our information or knowledge of the area. But if it's somewhere that you're living, that you see people using, and we've overlooked it, that maybe people opt for this route over this route because of certain conditions that you're aware of, because of your local knowledge, let us know that. If we've overlooked a connection point that's important, please let us know. We've tried our best to look at how we would want to walk and how we would want to bike, but sometimes, you just don't know what you don't know. So thank you so much for being here. If you would like to turn in your comment form tonight, you can. There's a box right outside the door here. And like I said, you can take these home, fill them out. The comment form lists address that you can mail these forms into if you'd like. You can also email them. And then there is a survey online that has the same questions that you can provide that feedback to. So do you have one more question?
It was actually the most important one. It's hard to tell where Opelika starts and Auburn ends. Are you guys working together between the two communities to connect the existing bike lanes that are already in either town?
Well, we've identified where the Auburn's locations are
Yeah.
and where their planned connections for their greenways and all
Because
are.
as
So
cycling communities, we really don't care.
right, y'all don't stop at the city limit line.
We don't stop at the state line. Right,
So
exactly.
we've
And the other comment was, thank you so much for having us and
Yeah,
inviting
yes.
us for this. This is
Thank you.
fabulous.
So we have taken that into account, looking at those connections.
Yeah, we work with Auburn's Bicycle and Transportation Group along with our MPO people, Daniel Wyatt and their group, and then Lee County to make sure that we do make connections that make sense between the two communities.
From Auburn.
As my friend here mentioned, I am the chairman of the Auburn Bicycle Committee. And I know I've shared with Scott Parker the plans, or I've mentioned to him that he can have a copy of the plan by contacting the city of Auburn, Miss Brandy Easel, who's the project coordinator for the bicycle. So anyway, that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Taylor, was there?
I just wanted to thank you all for coming. We have a town hall series meeting on September 3rd. That will be about improving our relationship with our youth. We have a great panel. Then we have another one after that about community relations on September, don't quote me on this one, guys, 24th. Both of those are at 6 p.m., so we hope to see y'all there. This is a great turnout. We'd like to see the same turnout there, but of course, you're also welcome to join us on YouTube. Also, please remind your friends to fill out the census. Mayor Fuller has promised a great surprise if we get to our goal of 85%. So that will be announced tomorrow. Thank y'all for coming.
Thank you so much.